Hello, friends, and welcome to our in-depth study through the book of Ruth. Today, in our second lesson, we pick up the story in Ruth chapter 1, verses 6 through 22. These verses shift from the depths of loss to a glimmer of hope amid heartbreak. Naomi, now a triple widow in Moab, hears that the Lord has provided food back in Judah. The famine has lifted. She decides it's time to go home, urging her Moabite daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, to return to their own families for a fresh start. Orpah, after some tearful hesitation, kisses Naomi goodbye and heads back. But Ruth clings fiercely, pouring out a vow of unwavering loyalty. She'll stay with Naomi, adopt her people and her God, live and die together. The two women journey to Bethlehem, arriving as the barley harvest begins. The townsfolk buzz with recognition. Is this Naomi? But she renames herself Mara, meaning bitter, lamenting how the Almighty has afflicted her. It's a passage of parting ways, profound pledges, and a homecoming laced with grief, where human choices intersect with divine timing. At the heart of this passage stands our big idea for today. Faithful love rescues the forgotten. This idea captures the pivot in Ruth's narrative, where personal devotion becomes the bridge from desolation to destiny. In the broader book, it echoes how God's steadfast, the Hebrew word hesed, his covenant love, a loyal, unfailing kindness that binds him to his people, works through flawed, faithful people to weave redemption. Just as the first part of chapter 1 tilled the soil of emptiness, this section sows seeds of belonging, leading to Ruth's gleaning, Boaz's kindness, and ultimately, the hope of a redeemer. Our big idea isn't about romanticized loyalty, but the gritty, sacrificial kind that mirrors God's pursuit of us, turning isolation into inheritance. It's a reminder that in our own stories of abandonment, faithful love, offered and received, can reclaim what's been lost. This hesed is the heartbeat of the story. God doesn't abandon the forgotten. He rescues them through the faithfulness of others, often in unexpected ways. To explore this, we'll walk through three main events drawn straight from the text. First, Naomi's decision to return home upon hearing of God's provision. Second, the parting of Orpah and the pledge of Ruth. And third, the bittersweet arrival in Bethlehem and Naomi's lament. These events aren't arbitrary. They trace the emotional arc from resolve to rupture to reflection, highlighting how faithful love emerges in the margins. As we move through them, notice how the narrative builds tension. Hope flickers, choices are made, and pain lingers, all under God's quiet guidance. First, let's look at Naomi's decision to return home upon hearing of God's provision. We'll start by reading the text itself, Ruth chapter 1, verses 6 through 7, from the New International Version. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. As we observe these verses, notice the spark of change. When Naomi heard in Moab, word travels across borders, a simple report that the Lord had come to the aid of his people. It's the first mention of God's direct action since the famine, a quiet reversal tied to providing food for them, echoing the emptiness from chapter 1. Naomi doesn't hesitate. She and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. The phrase, return home from there, carries weight. Moab has been home for a decade, a place of survival, but also sorrow. Inductively, we see the trio, Naomi and her two daughters-in-law, moving as a unit. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road. But the journey toward Judah looms as a threshold, symbolizing not just geography, but a return to covenant ground. No fanfare, no divine announcement. Just a widow's pragmatic step towards sustenance. The text highlights the Lord's initiative. He had come to the aid, using the Hebrew pakad, which means to visit or attend to with purpose, often in a redemptive sense, like God remembering his people in Exodus. When we dig into interpreting this, Naomi's choice reflects a widow's wisdom. Stay in exile and scrape by, or risk the road home where community and God's law might offer scraps through gleaning rights in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 through 10, which allowed the poor to gather leftover crops. The text credits the news to the Lord, underscoring sovereignty amid silence. He who allowed the famine now lifts it, inviting return without fanfare. This event interprets faithful love on a communal level. God's provision rescues a nation, prompting Naomi to reclaim her identity as part of his people. It's not triumphal. The aid is basic, food, but it stirs motion from stagnation. Like a hiker spotting a distant trail marker after hours lost in fog, this news pierces the haze of grief, guiding Naomi toward familiar paths. It also shows God's faithfulness to the land and its people, even when they wander, setting a pattern for how he rescues the forgotten by first providing for the whole. Tying this back to our big idea, faithful love rescues the forgotten. We see God's hesed as the initiator, rescuing a forgotten land, and, by extension, a forgotten woman. Naomi's response embodies received faithfulness, trusting the giver enough to pack up. What feels like a small pivot is the groundwork where human devotion will take deeper root, clearly illustrating how divine faithful love sparks the chain of rescue in forgotten lives. This divine loyalty invites human response, showing that rescue often begins with God's provision, not our perfection. For personal application here, think of times when provision breaks through your famine, a job offer after layoffs, reconciliation after rift. This event challenges us to move when God stirs, even if the path feels uncertain. What borders in your life need crossing? This week, identify one Moab you're lingering in and take a concrete step toward home, perhaps a phone call or prayer of release. How might God's faithful love rescue your forgotten season through that obedience? To go deeper, pray specifically for eyes to see his provision in the ordinary, like Naomi heard the news, and journal how it might be calling you forward. Next, we'll turn to the parting of Orpah and the pledge of Ruth, a moment that divides paths and defines destinies. Let's read Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 through 18. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband, even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons. Would you wait until they had grown up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. Observing this dialogue, it's raw and repetitive. Naomi's pleas echo 3 times, layered with questions and kisses. The weeping frames it, wept aloud again, signaling deep bonds forged in shared loss. Orpah's kiss is pragmatic release. Ruth's clung is visceral grip, from the Hebrew dabak, meaning to cleave like glue, the same word used for a man leaving his parents to cleave to his wife in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Ruth's vow cascades in poetry. 4 wears, paralleling life stages, culminating in a self-imprecatory oath invoking the Lord. Inductively, contrast sharpens. Orpah returns to her people and her gods, Moab's Chemosh implied, while Ruth forsakes all for Naomi's Yahweh. Naomi's bitterness peaks. The Lord's hand has turned against me. Yet Ruth's pledge invokes that same Lord as guarantor. The word kindness in Naomi's blessing is hesed, that loyal covenant love, which Ruth now embodies in return. In explanation, this event interprets the cost of loyalty in a honor-shame culture. Naomi, thinking of levirate marriage, a custom where a brother, or close relative, married the widow to produce an heir and preserve the family line and inheritance, ensuring widows weren't left destitute and property stayed within the clan, Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 through 10, sees no future sons, so urges release. Kindness for kindness, rest for the young. Orpah's choice is reasonable. Rebuild in Moab, remarry, reclaim security. But Ruth's hesed transcends reason. It's covenantal, echoing God's call to Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20. Cleave to him. Theologically, it subverts expectations. The foreigner chooses faith. The insider laments divine anger. This parting isn't villainizing Orpah, but highlighting Ruth's rare resolve, where faithful love rescues not just Naomi, but a lineage. Ruth's vow is a conversion of sorts, embracing Yahweh fully, showing that rescue crosses borders and bloodlines. Connecting this to our big idea, faithful love rescues the forgotten, Ruth's cling embodies the active side, offering hesed that rescues the abandoned. Like a teammate blocking a defender in the final seconds of a close game, her vow shields Naomi from further isolation, mirroring how Christ's love rescues us from being forgotten. This moment illustrates that faithful love isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to stay when leaving is easier, clearly demonstrating how one person's faithfulness can pull another from the brink of being forgotten. Applying this personally, where are you at a crossroads? Urged towards safety, but drawn to sacrifice. This challenges our beliefs about security. Is it self-preservation or self-giving? In relationships frayed by loss, choose the cling. Text an estranged friend. Commit to a mentoring role. What if your loyalty rescues someone's isolation? Journal Ruth's vow. Personalize it. For example, where you go, I will go, for a struggling family member, and act on one line this week. How does this reshape fear into fierce devotion? Consider sharing your own cling story with someone, inviting them to see God's faithfulness through it. Finally, let's consider the bittersweet arrival in Bethlehem and Naomi's lament. We'll read Ruth chapter 1, verses 19 through 22. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be the same Naomi who left?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. As we observe, the journey ends abruptly, until they came to Bethlehem. The whole town was stirred, suggests gossip or wonder, women gathering like a welcoming committee. Their question, "Can this be the same Naomi?" probes change. She left with husband and sons, returns halved. Naomi's retort renames her, Mara, from Mara, bitter, versus Naomi, pleasant, a self-eulogy. She bookends with full to empty, attributing it to Shaddai, the Almighty, twice, raw honesty in grief. Inductively, timing notes hope, as the barley harvest was beginning, linking back to provision in verse 6. Ruth's identity, the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, stands unadorned, an outsider integrated yet marked. The harvest timing is deliberate. Barley harvest was early spring, a time of new beginnings in Israel. Interpreting this, the homecoming exposes unresolved pain. Community recognizes, but Naomi rejects her old self. A lament, psalm-like, Psalm 88. Full evokes her family's departure, empty her losses, but she omits Ruth, perhaps seeing her as duty, not delight. Theologically, it tensions God's goodness. Affliction from the Almighty, yet harvest signals reversal. This event shows faithful love's rescue unfolding gradually. Town stir hints at restoration. Ruth's presence, the quiet rescuer. Naomi's bitterness is honest, not faithless. It invites God to work in her honesty. Much like Job's laments lead to deeper encounter. Looping back to our big idea, faithful love rescues the forgotten. Naomi's bitterness contrasts Ruth's unspoken fidelity, which will rescue her emptiness. Imagine a dormant oak in winter, branches brittle and bare, yet roots hold fast through frost. Spring's sap rises unseen, budding life from dormancy. So God's hesed, through Ruth, rescues the forgotten Naomi. The harvest backdrop reminds us that rescue has seasons. Barrenness gives way to abundance, clearly showing how faithful love operates in the background to lift the forgotten into renewal. For application, this confronts our renamed selves. Do we cling to bitter labels or invite rescue? It challenges behaviors. Speak your Mara moments honestly, but watch for harvest signs. In grief groups or prayers, name your emptiness, then affirm one faithful love around you. How does this text shift despair to dawn, urging us to arrive home expectant? Try this. Write a letter to your Mara self, acknowledging the pain, then end with a promise of faithfulness to God's rescuing work, and share it with a trusted confidant. As we wrap up this second lesson on Ruth chapter 1, verses 6 through 22, let's restate our big idea one more time. Faithful love rescues the forgotten. We've seen it unfold through Naomi's decision to return amid provision, the parting where Ruth pledges her all, and the arrival shadowed by lament, yet timed with harvest. These aren't mere plot turns. They're the canvas where God's love paints through people. This text doesn't just recount ancient roads. It challenges how we think about the empty places in our lives. Do we view being forgotten as final or fertile for fidelity? It probes what we believe. Can faithful love, human and divine, truly rescue? And it reshapes how we behave. Will we cling amid crossroads, renaming bitterness toward blessing? Friends, carry this big idea into your week. Let faithful love rescue your forgotten places. May He plant deeply in your barren places, yielding abundance you can't yet imagine. Now, take a look at the show notes for questions to reflect on. You can use them in your small group or just take a few moments to reflect on your own. If you like this study, please like and subscribe for more just like it. Until next time, grace and peace.